Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Our topic, as you may have seen, is Has StorageCraft Abandoned You? Cove is here to help. And we want to tell you about it and share the experience of someone like you who used to use StorageCraft and has found what life is like now in the Cove. So we could just move to the next slide. We have a few little housekeeping details. You've already been muted, so you don't need to worry about that. But please do send questions. There's two little windows at the top. There's either chat or Q&A. Either one of those, just put your questions in there and we'll be happy to speak to them. The session is being recorded and we will send you the recording afterward. So no need to worry about that. So the two gentlemen whose faces you see there, Chris Groot is the general manager for Cove Data Protection here at Enable. And our partner who has lived the journey that some of you might be about to go on is Stefan Wilson, the benevolent overlord of Alivia Technology. So these two folks will be talking with us today. So you've heard the news. You've heard that ArcServe, StorageCraft, some things are changing in the industry. And so we just wanted to share with you the differences between StorageCraft, products you might be using today, and how Cove Data Protection from Enable is a little bit different. We'll talk a little bit about how Cove's architecture affects your efficiency, security, and ability to deliver great services. But the biggest part that I think you're most excited about is sharing the real-world experience of switching from StorageCraft to Cove from our partner, Stefan. So with that, I will turn it over to our speakers.
Awesome. Well, this is exciting, Stefan. Really glad you could join. It's a different format of things. We're not just going to talk about, all the, about us, let's say. We want to talk a little bit about you to kick things off here. I threw just a slide up in here, just a little bit of background about your company, but just, kind of curious to hear a little bit about your journey. So, where your roots came from, maybe some of your roots with StorageCraft, because that's the topic of today, interweaving those, and where you're at today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. First of all, I'll go way back to my first exposure to StorageCraft was in 2010, working for a healthcare company. I'm just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, so working for a healthcare company in Knoxville, and really I was the sort of junior IT sysadmin there. Had a senior guy I learned a ton from, and decided that the grass was not very green on that side of the fence, and so jumped ship and started Alivia. And you can see they're founded in 2011. January 21st, 2011 was a Friday, and so I said at 5 p.m. effective my last day at my employer, I was now officially self-employed with Alivia Technology. So, and it's been a fun ride. So starting, from the trunk of my car, just trying to take care of people, trying to love people well, taking care of their IT needs. When a client would pay you with a smile on their face, write a check and say, I can't wait to, I'll call you next time. There's just nothing like that feeling in the world. And so been very blessed to grow a team, have a great leadership team, quite a few techs, do quite a few projects, in addition to becoming over that time what I would define as a pure play MSP. So we're really focused on no break fix work, managing relationships, managing tech well, doing that consistently. So
That's unbelievable. One, starting out on a Friday in 2011, and on the screen there, 51, a team of 51 today. That's remarkable. Wow. Well, that's great. And it's just, I have to ask, benevolent overlord, that sort of sets the tone for, your organization. I sense that's said with a smile on your face, not with the true, overlord sort of dark shadow kind of mentality. So
yeah,
share a bit about that.
I stole the title from it's a show on NPR called Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Gotcha.
And I used to listen to that driving back and forth to work sometimes. And, it was Benevolent Overlord Michael Danforth. And I was just like, that's a great title. And so I just took it, just Benevolent Overlord. And so now I get to tell my staff, like, hey, I've got to wear the benevolent hat right now. And here's a raise, here's a bonus, whatever. But then sometimes it's, hey, I got to put the overlord hat on, and no, you can't do that, right? So I get to kind of choose which hat I get to wear depending on what's going on. So
I gotcha. That's great. Oh, and one more question with you. Like, how would you describe like the culture of your team then? Like what would people say about like it working at your company?
So we are a great place to work certified organization, have been for 4 years in a row. And so to me, that is just a testament to the focus that we put on culture. That job that I mentioned that I came from did not focus on culture. And so the culture that got built was very negative, just a very poor, not fun culture. And so we have tried to really focus on culture, make coming to work. I'm a realist. Like, it's hard to say work is fun, but just in as much as is in my control, my power to exert influence over the work environment, I want it to be a great place to come. We're positive, we're uplifting, we're gonna help one another, we're gonna coach one another, we're gonna teach one another. We're not gonna silo off people. So we generally tend to hire hire for passion, trade for skill. So we'll hire completely green people and teach them and equip them over time. It's a lot more work to do that. But the tech that at the end is just a rock star. And so I've got a couple of those that are on staff that just blow you away, just how far they've come in such a short amount of time. So, and that they are then become champions of the culture. So ultimately, as a leader, that's my job, is to make culture champions within the organization.
It's amazing. Well, I got to say, going from 1 to 51 employees over the course of, just over 10 years, that is a sign that you've done something well in terms of that culture, because obviously there's a lot of pieces to that, making that formula work. Well, that's a great intro and kind of sets the landscape. You're a successful MSP by any measure. And so transitioning to StorageCraft, then you had a journey with them. You must have found them at some point from 2010 or so to today. What was that? What did that journey look like? Kind of and maybe share just a bit of details about kind of what the stack looked like, and then how you managed things, and so just kind of that experience over the years.
Yeah. So I mean, I started using StorageCraft, hands-on 2010 in that other job. When I hung out a shingle on my own, I just went with what I knew, right? And so I got StorageCraft, and so had been, really using StorageCraft since 2011. I would say I love that product. It did what it said it would do. Right? It restored servers to different, bare metal restores and stuff. And, hindsight's always 2020 now, but at the time, like, it was a great product. It worked. The pricing was predictable. We had predictable margins. We were to the point where we ended up at the very end, we had 3 NASs on site here with us that we were replicating sites back to. So we were our own storage for that.
Yeah.
And so we had really invested, quite a bit of capital, frankly, in kind of the back end of making StorageCraft work. And so we, enjoy that product, use that product. I don't know if you want me to get into the transition. I can answer the transitionary question. Oh, you asked about stack. So when you're an MSP in business for 10 years, I think we're on our 3rd PSA. So we're a managed shop today. We were Autotask before that. I don't know if you remember GFI Hound Dog from way back. Yeah. So that's what I started on for kind of an RMM. Then we were, I'm missing one in there, but we were Automate, and now we're Ninja. So our stack today is Manage for PSA, Ninja for RMM, and then we're Cove for backup. So.
Yeah. Cool. Well, just to dig in, just to kind of share some war stories, I kind of on the StorageCraft thing, like over those years, what did you experience in terms of either labor or you mentioned the technology that you had to like make some infrastructure investments, that sort of thing. And I know you're looking back now with, you mentioned hindsight you've got now. So kind of what would you describe kind of the highlights and lowlights of StorageCraft? I mean, obviously it must have saved your bacon once or twice, so that's always a highlight. But in terms of the other things that went along with that perspective, what's your observation?
I would say you make the best decision you have with the information you have at the time available. I would also say that I personally was sort of prone to the what I'll call the spilt milk fallacy, which is, hey, we've already invested in 3 NASs. We can't look at another product. We have over 500 licenses of StorageCraft out and about. Like, we can't look at another product. Just the labor lift alone to move from one product to another. Never mind the training and does the thing actually work and do all the things. Like, I was just looking at that saying, I don't know that we can do this. I don't know that we can handle this. I don't know that we have the capacity. Even at that time, we were 40 something staff. Still, just when you talk about having to touch that many boxes, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So I definitely had some fear, had some reservations over just changing a product like that. But it really wasn't until I looked at what I would call labor burn on, how are we having to handhold StorageCraft, right? With chains and broken chains, and we had backup drives that we were backing up to locally, and those would die, and then you have to roll a truck to swap that backup drive out. So you start kind of, maturing our processes enough for them to actually be trackable. And then pulling that number, I was just kind of flabbergasted at how much time we were burning on just supporting this product. Like, never mind moving our clients, technology forward. This is just backup, I need something that's you're just gonna install it. It just works, right? It just goes, and it can save our bacon, when we need it to. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of where we were with StorageCraft. Was been doing it a long time, over 10 years, for me personally. Yeah. And then having that, pretty significant CapEx invested in making sure that product worked.
Right. It was the CapEx, it was the labor, and then but there was the fear of change. And so when one day, something triggered to say, well, we're going to take a look at what alternatives are, I assume. But before I ask that question, because I do want to ask about like what that journey looked like. But I just want to touch on, so what outcomes do you promise to your customers? Like, in terms of what are their expectations of your service delivery and what they're going to get out of what you're doing? Is something explicit? Is it just understood?
So we personally, we don't publish SLAs to customers. We don't guarantee response to customers on paper. We have internal SLAs that we hold ourselves accountable to. But what I've found is it does not matter, even if we did that on a piece of paper, it does not matter what the piece of paper says. The customer wants it now.
Right.
They don't care that you have a 4-hour SLA. They want it done in 4 minutes. And so that's just the personal why we've never really done that on paper. So, we've seeded a product that we keep a nearline copy, right, in case we have to restore locally. Because some of these servers, I mean, they're terabyte and a half, 2 terabytes, and so downloading that would take a measurable amount of time.
Yeah.
So, I will say that, Chris, are you familiar with Patrick Lencioni? Who Patrick Lencioni is? He's an author, speaker.
Yep, absolutely.
So he has a book called The Working Genius.
Yep.
And we did The Working Genius, and Paul, who's on staff with me, his Working Genius is Wonder. And so he's constantly looking at everything saying, could this be better? Could this be better? Mousetrap, could we build this better? Surely there's got to be another solution to do this better. So he was really the one pushing me to look at. And so he was kind of assembling all this evidence to say, we need to look at something else. Like, this is not this is not tenable. We can't keep doing this. If you grow, we talk a lot about scaling here at Elite. And if you just keep scaling your problems, they're just going to get bigger, right? So we had to figure out how to make a change now so that we're then not scaling that problem to the same volume that we are everything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and by the way, I am not a wonder. I am I'm a galvanizer.
Yeah, me too.
But great to have a wonder on the team for sure, to think about those problems and think about how to scale and think about, the terms that I sometimes use are, how do you add more customers without adding more employees? Because as a service provider, I mean, that's the formula, right? So switching backup vendors for many people sounds like, about as much fun as rubbing sandpaper on your eyes. You got to go just look at so many options. It's daunting. In a perfect world, how would you describe, that journey, the outcomes you were looking for your team? Did you have success criteria? How did you approach it?
We did not formally, we had a project internally in the PSA to track time, right, where we kind of were with everything. But, the success metric was pretty simple, which was get off of StorageCraft.
Okay.
So that it wasn't, we tried not to overcomplicate it. And we'd actually set out like a 3-month timeline. So we have a position role we call managed services engineer. His name's Sam. And so we had set out, with Sam and said, hey, you got 3 months to do this. Okay. Don't try to cram this all in a day or a week. Like you're just going to burn yourself out. Just break it down into chunks, right? Measure it, and we can migrate it. We can migrate it that way. Now, Sam had figured out through RMM, through Ninja, how to deploy that. And so he actually had done it in about, I think it was like 2 weeks.
Sorry. To clarify, he did that with Cove in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we rewind, though, I'm just curious, before you've actually selected Cove and rolled that out in 2 weeks, or was that in your trial?
We didn't roll that. I don't remember the timeline exactly. We didn't roll everybody into the trial. We didn't do that. We rolled maybe like 10 or 15, something like that, to try to kick the tires on it pretty hard. Do some in-house restores and that kind of thing.
Awesome. That makes sense. And did you also do that with some other products as well? Did you kind of shop and see?
We had, yeah, we shopped. We shopped around a little bit. I'm not even sure I can remember all the names. We had a Cronus for another piece. So we had a Cronus for one piece, like laptops basically, and then Shadow Protect for workstations, desktops, and servers. So we really wanted to unify those two products into one solution, so we could just roll one and not have these, 2 portals and 2 bills and all that stuff that we had. So that was kind of the success criteria, to your point, when doing vendor selection, was, can we kill off 2 products and get one product that will do it all, and then hopefully, ideally, make our lives even easier, so that we're not spending a ton of labor with broken backup chains, and all that fun stuff, consolidation, retention, all that. Times however many endpoints we had. So,
yeah. So then you found the I don't know, you'd started the trial, you probably were testing some other things, and what feedback did you get from the team in terms of their experience, what they discovered, and how did it align with the outcomes you're shooting for?
Yeah, super simple deployment, really easy to set up, really easy to. The dashboard to me was very MSP friendly, because we were dealing with some that just looked like they had tried to bolt on the MSP at the end. That's what a Cronus kind of felt like, honestly. It was not a pleasant experience to try to restore something, right? So we really were focused on kind of the experience of using the product. Did it work? did it do what it says it's going to do, which is, hey, it's going to back up. We've got to restore a file. We got to restore a single file, and then we've got to restore the whole thing to bare metal, right? Will it do that gamut of tasks? And so we put it through its paces. We did it a couple different ways internally, back it up just to internal computers and stuff. And it worked. It took care of all of that, really. So.
Awesome. For the group, for the audience, just want to mention, we're going to take just like 5 minutes or so just to kind of just give you a show of the actual product, because I think that will help clarify, make it really real, the things we're talking about. But so if you're kind of wondering about that question, we're going to answer that today, and we could also do some Q&A at the end as well. So if you got some questions, you can just start dropping them in the chat if you like. But before we go there, so curious to ask, so you had this 3-month kind of onboarding vision in terms of the project, it was like one of those things you had to bite off. And then now you've been using the product for, a few months since that transition. What's the feedback you're getting? What happened with that onboarding experience? What's the feedback kind of now that in steady state?
Yeah, so the onboarding took us way less time than we had originally anticipated, because we were able to deploy the product via RMM. We were able to deliver it that way, and verify that it was backing up and functioning right within Cove. So we didn't have to touch 500 devices. We were only dealing with either the ones that had. I love clients. I don't want to bash clients at all, but you've got some that just, let's say, don't upgrade very frequently. So we had some that we knew were going to be trouble, and they were, just based on hardware age and that kind of thing. So we were able to take care of those. But all told, what we had imagined as a 3-month project, like I said earlier, turned out to really only be a couple of weeks. And so now with steady state, the labor that I'm looking at is really minimal in terms of making sure the product is actually functioning, right? Making sure the product is taking backups and, that it's working. Steady state today is, we actually have the capability now with account managers or even low-level techs, can activate backup on a device with a checkbox in Ninja. And so it will deploy Cove and then update their agreement for the billing side in managing, ConnectBox managing the PSA. So we've been able to extend. We did not have that capability before. Right? It was a very manual process, probably minimum 2 people involved to install Shadow Protect, get it working, get it functioning, and then, we got to bill for that. We got to remember to bill for that. So now we've got a closed loop system that's literally just tied to a tick box. And it's like, oh my gosh, we could sell an entire company with backup. We've got one going right now where they said, this is what we want. We want you to back up every desktop because the owner had a bad experience with a new computer deployment. Not all of his little desktop shortcuts made it into where, they should have. And so he says, I don't want this again. I want every desktop backed up. Okay. Click, 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 click. Done. You're good. Right. And so we could not have done that before. And the account manager can do that. Right. No admin passwords, no domain credentials, nothing. So that's been really cool functionality that Cove has enabled us to obtain.
That's really awesome. When you can make that kind of that start to finish click. I'm just curious to ask then, so in terms of your velocity, like your sales velocity or, the impact to your account managers, the external folks, has that changed? Is that before and after, is anything different?
My gut tells me it has, just because it's low barrier to entry now. And so we're able to do that faster. I couldn't give you data off the top of my head to tell you we went from selling 1 or 2 a week to 10 a week. I couldn't tell you what that number is. But it's definitely made the onboarding process easier, right?
Right.
You think about an MSP, the most complex, we're a traction shop, we're an EOS traction shop. And so the most complex process that we have is onboarding, because you're ripping and replacing all kinds of stuff to put your stuff in. And so anything we can do, one of my guys loves to say this, you can't inject simplicity into a process, right? You can only remove complexity, right? And so for us with that onboarding, because we sell backup as part of it. We make clients tell us no. And then sign it, right? Sign your name in blood that you agree not to have this backed up. You talk about velocity, like the ability for our onboarding specialists to just go in there and just onboard, deploy the RMM and deploy backup without a ton of extra steps. Like that's made that process. We've removed the complexity from the deployment process. That was one of my biggest hangups with Shadow Protect. It was just a complex product to deploy, because you got Shadow Protect, the software, you've got Image Manager, and then, oh, by the way, if you're going to replicate it somewhere, you got Image Manager on the receiving end that's got to be set up and configured. And so there was a lot of steps, a lot of complexity to just finally get to the point where we're saying, okay, this thing is backed up.
Plus some infrastructure to be placed at all those locations as well.
That's right. That's right. And oh, by the way, if you don't want it on your infrastructure, that's fine. You gotta pay us to host it, or cost per gig or whatever. So I mean, I ran the numbers on it years ago, and way more cost effective for us to just buy our own. I mean, I had 2 dedicated internet circuits just for NAS, so that we could replicate all this back to us overnight. So yeah, it was looking back now in hindsight, it was a complex series of tasks we had mastered, right? Because we had documented them, we had written them out, we had done it. But you add up all that labor burn, it was a lot. It was complex.
Yeah. And was there, this is a closing question, or I'm getting close to the closing question, but I love what you're saying. The two things actually. So if I challenged an MSP, let's say you've got 500 points. Let's say a more average scenario would be like 50 or 100. And it's very common where people are like, well, I'd like to do this, but yeah, it's going to be the 3-month project, and I'm going to have to, take Bob off what he normally does and spend time on this. And that sounds, we got other priorities right now. And my challenge in return is, no, we can take, 1 or 2 hours on a Friday afternoon. We're going to use your favorite deployment method. If that's your RMM, great. We're going to roll this out across all your customers, and you're going to come back to work on Monday, and you're going to see a list of green backups in your dashboard. Is that a realistic thing to challenge someone with based on your experience?
Yes, depending on internet connections of clients and that sort of thing. So
sure.
Really the only issues we have now are really internet related. Right? I mean, the software works, the product works. It's just the connection. You got to have that connectivity. So we've actually, kind of stumbled across some internet issues with places because of, hey, why didn't this backup run? Oh, well, it's having connection problems. Why is this always happening? So, but yes, that's a perfectly valid, the scenario you are laying out there is perfectly valid, and use us as validation in that, yes, that is a reality. That is what happens with the product.
Yeah, great. I'm sure for the audience, given the circumstance of the announcements and so on, transition happening, that's something that's top of mind. So I always get to hear that, right? That indeed that challenge is one worth taking up. The other last question that I just want to ask, the idea of owning the infrastructure and being involved, being that involved, and I would describe it as a mindset shift of going from this local first architecture to this cloud first architecture, and kind of releasing all the tasks that your people would have in terms of, managing all the different components, and just kind of having that all coming off your desk and having it delivered as a service to you now. Was there anything difficult in that mindset shift, let's call it, because, you were in that business of touching the hardware and connecting the wires, and anything from a risk perspective, like a security perspective, anything in those angles that crossed your mind as you went through your journey?
Yes, but not in the way that I think you are going. I didn't want to have any infrastructure. I mean, I didn't, in the beginning when I started Allevia, I wanted to be everything cloud. I didn't want to own anything. I had a very wise kind of mentor relationship with another guy who owned an MSP, a pretty good sized MSP in Knoxville. And he says, I have a data center full of boat anchors in 7 years. And so he's like, I don't want to do that. So I took that to heart in 2011. I don't want to own a server. I don't want to have to host anything on site. I want everything to be cloud as much as possible because the technology's there, the security's there, the stability is there. And so when I had to buy those NASs and had to put those internet connections in to support it because it was eating our bandwidth, that bothered me because that was not one of my goals. I didn't want to own the infrastructure. I didn't want to have the risk, right? And you do the insurance audit, and they're like, "Wait, you have what?
Right?
You have how many clients backups in this closet?" But yeah, we've got biometric locks, we've got cameras, we've got a security system, we got all these things, right? But still, the risk was there, and so for me, it was kind of like, this is we're back to my original vision, which was don't own anything. Don't own a data center full of boat anchors in 7 years. Leave that to the specialists, right? Leave that to the Amazons and the Microsofts and whatever of the world. And just rent it, make it an OpEx, CapEx. So yes, it was a mindset shift, but obviously not the way that you're going. Now we have some clients, they're kind of old school and they want to touch the bits and bytes of their data, but it's pretty easy to poke holes in that pretty quick, right? It's like, hey, do you have an investment account? Yeah. Is there a lot of money in there? Yeah. Where's that? Is that in the bank? You can go put your hands on that? No. So it's poke holes in stuff pretty darn quick, and convince people to sort of your line of thinking just by asking the right questions.
Yeah, love it. Cool. Well, that I think makes for a great transition. We haven't actually stated to the audience what exactly Cove is, and I suspect there's a number of folks that may not be all that familiar with it. So I'm just going to throw up on the screen. Just a little bit about us, just real quick, just so everyone knows what Cove Data Protection is. It's obviously backup and disaster recovery, but it is a different architecture than StorageCraft. There's many other vendors out there, I would say, follow the same pattern of a local first architecture where there's, name Veeam or the appliance vendors like your Datos or what have you, where they run that primary backup locally, infrastructure required, and then a secondary copy off the network, got to be hosted somewhere, whether it's, with the MSP or with, some other storage provider and so on. Cove flips the script on that. So basically the primary copy is going direct to the remote storage. We deliver that all as one single service. So all you have to do as service provider is deploy agents essentially. And then the parts that you want to have locally for fast restore, you can then configure that and bring them back if you choose. So depending on your circumstance and your client, we offer a great deal of flexibility where you can recover to any number of locations. But the basics are Microsoft 365 servers, whether they're virtual, whether they're physical, whether they're living in a hyperscaler like Azure, AWS. We support them all. Workstations as well. It's delivered as a service, comes with 24/7 support, recovery hotline. So it's a real situation where basically all the tasks that used to be work, you can kind of take them off your table, and generally the results and you can touch on this, Stefan, if you like. The words we hear back from customers is, I went from 40 hours to less than 4. I went from 90 tickets down to less than 9. Like that kind of 10-to-1 ratio comes back to us in various different forms. Would you, how would you comment on that statement?
Yeah, I would agree dramatically. Yes. I don't have the specificity on the numbers, but I can absolutely tell you, saved us time, reduced ticket count, reduced alert count, which in turn means we can go off and do other stuff with that time.
Right. And if you had to translate that, do you translate that into then profitability?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm not having to hire as many people to maintain the same number of desktop servers, right? I mean, literally the conversation one day was, we're probably going to have to hire somebody just to keep Shadow Protect happy. Just to keep like a full-time employee who's pretty sharp, just maintaining this backup product. Because that's what we're promising our customers is, hey, we've got your backups, we're making sure you're backed up, that's what you're paying us for. And so literally that was the conversation. And that is entirely flipped on its head now. Like we would never hire someone just to maintain backups because the product Cove, is efficient. It just does it. So we don't have to worry about that labor.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome to hear that. And, just in case anyone's surprised, if Cove is a new name to you, 13,000 MSPs around the world are using it. So we are very much a global business. Beyond that, there's 180,000 business protected, 2 million M365 users, 2 million 365 users. We've got awards, across the board in terms of various different places. We can fill you in all of that. But, sometimes when you're not all familiar with a name and the Cove, the name that, sometimes isn't as well known as names like Veeam or what would be another example, like an Acronis, just to know that the scale and the size of this business, we're doing something special here. And I think maybe to that end, what I'll do just in terms of setting expectations, take about 5 minutes just to kind of highlight the product. Then we'll do give everyone a sense of like if you're interested, what next steps would look like, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A if people want to stick around. Completely optional, and we can go in any direction at that point. So if I was just to give the 1 minute to 5 minute explanation, this is what Cove looks like. So you're going to come into a domain called backup.management, username, password, multi-factor authentication. That's sort of the first sign that we care about security. The interesting part about it, though, is all the infrastructure is off your network, off your customer's network. So the management layer, the metadata, the primary backup storage is all hosted. So from a security posture perspective, none of that's kind of within the attack surface, which would generally be on the local network for any customer. So any bad actors at play are kind of taken out of that just from a different architecture, which is actually a simple answer to a complex problem. In many ways. So that sense of isolation. The other thing I'll mention is that from a security perspective, all user actions are available to you. And this is just a nice thing because if there is any questions about, did I have a bad employee? Did I have was it a malicious intent or a bad actor? What exactly is going on? I can, as an example, just click delete and I can see, oh, this guy here, he's got a complicated name. And he deleted a user. This guy was taking out delete. Okay, that's, was that a good thing or not, right? So very quickly, you can see exactly what's going on in your environment. From a backup perspective, we touched on deployment. So you're going to set up what we call profiles, which is your service level. So do I back up once a day or once an hour? So deploying, just to give everyone a sense, the choice of Microsoft 365, servers and workstations. Select your service level. These are configured by you, your operating system, and that's going to bring a customized executable that you can, roll out with whatever your favorite software deployment method is. So it's going to install, it's going to set the selection automatically, the schedule, all the details are pre-configured on the install. So it's just a silent event, and basically it calls back into your dashboard and you're done. So that's really simple. The other thing that I'll mention is you talked briefly about, you've got a whole bunch of customers all over the creation, all these different internet speeds, connection speeds, hardware, different hardware, some old, some new. How do you handle it? One of the secret sauce pieces of Cove, and this is the thing where you will not find this elsewhere in terms of efficiency And this is what truly is why wouldn't Veeam copy this architecture if it was so much more productive and saved so much time and had all these great benefits? Well, because it is about moving data. And how efficiently can you do that? So if I just take an example here, this is an example of you can see in the history of stats. We track the system state and the files and folder backup. If there was SQL, we'd see a third line for that within the mix. This example, it's a 2.5 terabyte server. We can see in the last backup window, 3,221 files changed. That was made up from a lot of small files. It was only 1.2 gigs. So that was the actual change set that you see. But the magic of Cove is the transferred size. So this is the amount of data that moved over the internet, and that's 5.09 megs. So that's megs, not gigs. So that translation from a 2.5 terabyte server being very efficient at finding 1.2 gigs and moving 5 megs of data, that's the magic that makes this cloud first architecture work at scale, both from a backup perspective, and we apply that same intelligence to the restore perspective. It's something you're not going to find elsewhere, and that is how we achieve the reliability and take those, the 10x factor on the labor component. So you're winning from security, you're winning from labor, and in today's world, that's kind of the win-win. And doing all that in 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Another change in mindset for a lot of people is backups happen once a day. Well, you know what really stinks is when you have a problem at 4 p.m. and your last backup was for midnight. And so if you can go back to 3:30 or 3:45, that's a pretty nice message for your client. It's certainly a step up in service level. And that is like a newfound functionality in terms of service levels that then become available with Cove. So couple of key details there. But then, of course, one would be asking themselves, what about the restore? So in terms of just giving you a sense of what's involved, you do pre-configure the locations you want to restore to. So that can be Azure, ESXi, Hyper-V. So you got a great deal of flexibility. It doesn't matter. It could be your data center. It can be a hyperscaler. We're very flexible. We've solved that problem of doing this all over the internet. So in terms of the complexity, though, you imagine your new staff that have come in. Of course, this is always the situation. It's 3:45 on a Friday, and your wife's picking you up at 4. Kids are in the car, going away for the long weekend, and then the call comes, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to handle? Do I need this? I got to get the specialist to handle this, right? Well, with Cove, we kind of changed that script where you can actually have the intern do the work is really the goal. Maybe the account manager even in Stefan's world. But basically, you can choose your target. ESXi will be showing up here next month, likely. But you choose your target where you want to restore to. So we've got a couple of locations pre-configured here. And it's just a matter of clicking through, selecting your locations. The device that you want to restore. It's going to check my credentials. There's all role-based permissions involved. You go back to the point in time that you want to restore from. So if it was a ransomware scenario, let's say we had to go back to last Friday because, we got to get back to a good restore point. That's great. Do we want to receive a nicely formatted email? Sure, that sounds good. So it's going to give me a restore report, or I can send that to my client. I press confirm, and that's going to kick off the restore process. So you can see a very simple process. And so in just a matter of time, you're going to have your restore done. Second thing I'll say is for some clients, you want to control the predictability on how fast you can bring that back up. So, if the data is stored in an encrypted, unbootable format, the restore brings it into an unencrypted, bootable format. If you want to do that on a continuous basis and have it done proactively so that when production goes down, you've got a bootable copy you can bring up in a matter of moments, you can turn on what we call standby image. So same process, same general experience that you just add to plan. Here you can see it, ESXi is part of it. But what's going to happen is it's going to run that initial restore, have that VM, And then every time a backup happens, it's going to, that 5 megs of data I was highlighting a minute ago, it's going to inject those changes on that VM wherever it resides. So it's very efficient. And if it's with using a hypervisor or Azure, it'll actually, if you want, run a boot test on that machine. And it'll bring up a screenshot of the device, that it booted, how long it took. There's the 14 minutes. Here's the event log of all the services starting and so on. So it gives you a nice bit of insight into that actually is a machine that's ready to go, and a very nice attestation to your customers. Last thing I'll just cover real quick, recovery testing is number 3 on the list here. What this is basically on infrastructure hosted by Cove. You can, again, in just a matter of a minute or two, add a device to recovery testing. Recovery testing is something that most service providers aspire to, and many fall short of because it's just too much work and there's too many other things involved. So we've taken that on for you. Again, just kind of taking all that complexity off your desks and saving you a ton of time. So this will actually run that full boot test on an environment that we provide the nicely formatted report that you can deliver to your client. The only thing to know, though, with recovery testing is that it is a test. And so after the test is complete, it's destroyed. And so it's not available there for a failover. If you want to have that, then the options are standby image or the one-time restore that I touched on briefly. File level restore. I'm not going to go into it, but no need to mount an image and extract files, all that stuff. You can basically, right from the dashboard, the client calls, you can right click, you can launch a backup client, and you'll get the interface, like just very similar to Windows Explorer, and you can search and you can just restore as much or as little as you want in a matter of moments. So that file restore is now a completely changed process. And then lastly, of course, Microsoft 365. It's a pretty big deal these days. And certainly we've seen the response of our customers. So having, the ability to protect OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, Exchange, of course, and being able to have that, available for restore, very simple process. So, you can filter and run your backups. I do need to connect here. I won't go into that, but also a very good experience. So just kind of covering off, all aspects, getting it all into one console. It all results in tech efficiency. It all results in a more secure experience for you, the MSP, as well as for your clients, because everything is isolated. And also then the other, third piece of the equation is that being able to increase service levels. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to flip back because we are closing up now. If this has been interesting to you, if this causes you to pause and look a little deeper, we got a couple options here. Some people are folks that like to, run the show themselves and not talk to anyone. So we do have a 30-day trial where you can dig in. You can use the QR code if you want to pull up your phone. We've got a short URL here, bit.ly/trial Cove. I think we'll drop it in the link in the chat as well, just in case you want to check that out. The other option is to have a conversation. So if you don't want to get in the tech and you actually want to understand the pricing model, it is a per device pricing model, so it's super simple. Comes with a very large size, license size, in the sense so that you should be always just kind of one price. Keep it very simple, make your margins very clear. All that's available. But if you want to chat about that, we can do that. This is a meeting link. You can book your own meeting if you like. Super simple. And if you do all that by next Friday, then the good news is we'll actually waive your first $825 over 3 months. So it's a nice offer. We can explain the details as we get together. But at the end of the day, we want to help make that transition as easy as possible. So that's always part of it. So what I would encourage you, if you're thinking about it right now, go ahead and sign up, and that offer will then be on the table. All right, Carrie, I know you're still with us.
Yes.
Anything else that I know what I
Yes.
forgot. Do you know what I forgot?
What'd you forget?
I forgot to also mention that a third option, if this is a little bit too much commitment for you, is that on Tuesdays, so next week Tuesday, in 4 days, as well as every 2 weeks after, we do have a recovery master class that we are offering that folks could attend as well.
Yeah, we've got a link for that in the chat as well. So there's 3 links in the chat. There's a link to start a trial, a link to meet one-on-one with Chris, and an link about the masterclass. So that's all good. And we do have a few questions if you're ready for that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So one of the questions has to do with our local speed vault. They're saying, are the backups stored directly in Enable's cloud? And I just replied and said, yes, and you can keep an optional local copy, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So just for context, that term is a little bit, product specific, but basically primary copy of the backup is always like getting off the network isolated. That's the architectural piece, but in parallel, you can also, if you choose, you can keep a copy of that encrypted data. It's actually the same data that would be at their own site on any local, like anywhere on the local network. So you can use a NAS or, any kind of simple storage that you choose. And when it runs a restore, the product is intelligent enough to know, to check where's my fastest restore location from. And so obviously when you're on the local network, there's some advantages to that. What we've seen a lot of, because of a lot of the innovation that's come across in the last couple of years, and I touched on that, having those recovery locations where you can keep that bootable copy of the data. We've seen an increasing number of partners actually move towards using that because they found, on the local network, that's actually the piece that they find most valuable, and knowing that they got all the encrypted backups with the history and the archiving and so on available off the network is the right fit. So we've got a couple of different options depending on your preferences, and certainly the short answer though is, in some cases it's really nice, many cases it's really nice to have a portion of your backup infrastructure still having a copy locally, but not being reliant on it is really the where we're going to take you with Cove.
Excellent. That sounds great. Another question we had early on was, like with every backup solution, you must be prepared for disasters. What is the best advice you can give or highlight in order to be prepared?
Stefan, what do you think?
Yeah, so we use the local speed vault for all servers. So if it's a server for us, you automatically get a speed vault. It's baked into the cost base, baked into the price. We're putting that local nearline storage in that we own. We own it. It's got a label on it. We own it. That's our device. I usually tell people, typically, if your building burns down, I'm going to be able to spin your server up faster than you have a place to actually go to work, because of that cloud native restore that we use. And we use the backup verification, where it takes a screenshot. And so we leverage that as well. So yeah, and making sure, that you have processes for that, at least, highlights kind of written down. The worst time to figure out what your process is when you are under the gun. When a client, a 20-seat client is hard down and you're fumbling around with the help manual trying to figure out, oh yeah, what was that step again? What did I do again? I treat it like a pilot. Like, you've got a notebook there and you just pull that notebook out and turn to page 1 and here it is. This is what we do, So we try to keep that up to date based on the documentation as well.
Love it. Couldn't agree more. Preparation is, to answer the question for my chair, what I've seen, the line I use is the worst time to learn about disaster recovery is during a disaster. And unfortunately, we've watched that movie a few times here at Cove, and so we're there to help. But it was actually one of the reasons why we started this masterclass, and we're running it every 2 weeks. That preparation piece it doesn't take a lot, but man, if when that phone rings, if you can just be like, I'm going to relax, I'm going to restore, and I'm going to rejoice. Like if that's your formula at the end of the day, that's where you want to live. And it just an ounce of preparation really does bring you to that place if you got the right tool set. So, and it's been amazing, actually. We didn't really predict this, but the amount of response we've got on this masterclass has been actually about 8 times what we had kind of planned for. So it's been a lot of fun. It's good to see that owners of MSPs want to send their technicians so that everyone, we've got the confidence that everyone's prepared. So it's great to see. Well, thank you for that, Andrew. I'll throw this back on the closing slide here. And just want to take a moment, Stefan. Amazing that you could join us today. Your story of what you've done with your organization is very impressive. It's just a joy to meet folks like yourself. And honestly, getting to spend time with customers is the most inspirational part of my job. Sometimes on the internal stuff, you only get to hear the bad news and not the good news. And it's just very rewarding to know that that's what's happening on the field. So just thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right. And to everyone else, thank you very much for sticking around. And we'll see you soon.